Feeling like I'm fresh out the water, put that on my daughter, I'm dripping Mystique. Pin to the pad of my author and marathon jogger, been running for weeks. Yeah, I tell no lies, my eyes on the prize, you lose by choosing to blink. I found a treasure by taking on pressure and pushing myself to the brink. Looked in the mirror to tell me that I'ma be wealthy, I said I concur.
What's going on? I'm Bobby J from City Chapters. I'm your host. Today is chapter 5 with my man, Grayson Ervin.
Yes.
Grayson was born and raised in Spokane. He went to Mount Spokane High School, bachelor's in media arts at Eastern Oregon University, and he's the president of Bison Printing, which he's here to speak about today. What's up, brother?
Not much, man. Just working, living in Spokane. Like you said, I'm born and raised Spokaneite. Hey, happy to be on this podcast. Happy to be part of anything that supports Spokane, whether that be arts or business. And I like what you're doing here. You know, I like a podcast about just the core or the heartbeat of what's going on. So yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you, man. Yeah, and it's great to have you. We met, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 years ago at a chance meeting before, well, not a chance meeting, but Joel had brought us together to talk about him building a new facility. And then I guess that was really the beginning of the concept of Bison Printing, right? Yep. We met at sushi.com.
Yeah. That was what I was thinking too. Yeah, probably. I'd say that was a solid 4 years ago.
It had to be, honestly, like maybe even 5, 6, because even after that meeting, things didn't really get rolling until at least 2 years later, probably.
God, you're probably right.
So it's probably been 6 years. Crazy.
Yeah, So Joel, and for anybody that doesn't know, we're speaking about Joel Barber, founder of the Great P&W and my business partner in Bison Printing. And we were talking to you because you knew garment decoration from a lot of different angles, you know, whereas Joel knew how to design for print, but he'd never necessarily run his own print shop. Not only had you worked at a print shop, but you knew all about managing multiple clients as well as also running your own retail brand. So that's, we got talking with you super early on. And man, in those days, I was like, anything you were saying, I was furiously taking notes on. There'd be multiple times because I was stressed. You know, I didn't know what to expect. I was thinking like, I had things I'm like, okay, yeah, ask Bobby this question, and as you know, as you go, things start to all make sense. But yeah, it's if we're just talking about, let's just simplify this for anybody listening. If we're just talking about putting a design on a t-shirt, you could ask 3 different people how they go about it, and you'll get 3 different answers. You know, it's not necessarily like a formula where it's like, oh yeah, the only way to do it is like this. There's, oh my goodness, there's endless variables. So like just being able to talk to you in those early days, man, that feels like a lifetime ago already.
Yeah, yeah, it really was too, a lifetime ago. You know
if we're talking 4 to 6 years,
there's so much that's happened in that time for all of us. So,
you know, like a global pandemic.
Yeah, that being one, that was a time warp for sure. So, what's your backstory? You know, just give us a little bit of you growing up in Spokane.
Yeah,
what you were doing, sports or whatnot, and those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the most part, born and raised Spokane, spent a few years in Federal Way, Washington, just family move, but we came back. Like many kids before, there wasn't many digital devices or digital media to consume. Like my life was sports. Like you get out of school and you're like, oh cool, this is baseball season, this is soccer season, this is basketball season. You know, like I played any and all sports. And then I think you really don't have choices in life until you get to about middle school. And so that's when I really started I started dipping off of sports and started getting more into like digital media, like I was really lucky. I always had a computer growing up, because my dad was in sales. And he wasn't necessarily selling technology, but from the early days, like his companies would always be giving him, I guess you could call these things laptops. They're pretty rough, like some of them were black and white screens. Some of them were like 8-color screens. But before, think about any computer you have today. If you don't have it connected to the internet, how much can you really do on it, And so like in the early days, I had computers as a kid, but I couldn't unleash it until about middle school. And that's when I started really getting into like building websites, or even, digital cameras were getting big then too. So it's like, oh, how do I attach this photo? How do I edit this photo? And I started really throttling down sports because I was sick of going to practice. Like to me, school was really draining, and it was like, dude, I don't want to stay here for another 4 hours and go like practice like basketball or something like that. Yeah. And so I'd want to go home and tinker around on a computer. And that only got bigger and became a bigger part of my life as high school came about, because technology was changing so fast in those days. So you're getting new computer, you're getting new internet speeds. And at this time, sports is like outside of snowboarding. That was pretty much my passion. I was obsessed with that. Outside of snowboarding, I wasn't doing much. I got talked into playing soccer in high school, but that was just like, one of my teachers was like the head coach, and so he was just like, I think he was really just concerned, like, if I wasn't playing, some of my friends wouldn't play either, because my friends were way better than me. And so it was just kind of like my presence guaranteed their presence kind of thing. And so, that growing up, I was tinkering with digital media, and luckily that's kind of where the world went, and led me into various careers. Before I got into screen printing, I was working at a digital marketing agency, which can mean a lot of things, but for me, that was it was a lot of business to business campaign management type stuff. But it was a little boring. But just having computer competence, even if we're just talking about Microsoft Office or Photoshop, or even just simple things like emails, like learning those as a kid has taken me so far in life. Yeah,
cool. So, like, when you were tinkering around with these computers, did you develop any businesses at that time in high school? Like, were you getting on some entrepreneur grinds?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was, my biggest one is, and I hope I don't mess up these years, but I think it was about 1999, 2000. I was, like I said, snowboarding was my passion. And so I was building snowsuperstars.com, and it was pictures, snow reports. I would even do some like competition coverage. So I would like go to the competitions, somehow compete, take photos, post the results, do a little like, it's kind of funny. I do like a little write up on like, I guess what happened at the competition. I don't know.
Like a blog almost.
Yeah, exactly. I'd probably cringe if I had to read back through it. And it's funny because in this point in time, it's like, that sounds like that's a kind of a weird website, but it in those days, there was a lot of these little websites, and they were really popular. Like there was this, I never got in, but there was this, God, I wish I could remember. It was something called like the Border Connect. It was like this network of snowboarding websites, and it was like these big 5 snowboarding websites. The only one I can remember was board2k.com. And funny enough, they were kind of all doing the same thing, but, from different regions of the country. Cause as you know, snowboarding is like very regional. Mm-hmm. Like, the P&W snowboarding is a lot different than like East Coast snowboarding. And we don't even necessarily know what's going on over there, and they don't know what's going on over here. So I was building that website, trying to get traffic by any means necessary. I've done some stupid things to try to get people to that website. And I did it actually, funny enough, I did have some merchandise made for it. Joel Barber, funny enough, did the design for it. And it was this really cool snowflake. I still have one of the sweatshirts that's never been worn or anything like that. And I had those printed. I don't know if you remember it. It was called Viper Sportswear on Division.
Yeah.
And those dudes were super cool. Like they didn't, because in those days, we're talking, I'm around 13, 14 years old. And so like my biggest fear about everything is I'm trying to build this thing is I'm like, who's going to take me serious? Like in email, nobody had any clue what age I was, so I could get away with a lot. But as far as like in-person stuff, it was really tough to be taken serious, especially when your average person that's older, they don't know a lot of people, a digital camera wasn't even that common. So these people are like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
So Viper Sportswear was super cool. They took, my dad had to drive me there, and they took me and my dad into like the back, and they're like, this is a screen printing press. This is the dude that's he's gonna scan this piece of paper that Joel drew this artwork on. He's gonna bring it into this computer, and we're gonna put it on these screens. And it's funny because at that point in time, like I was just like, man, I'm glad I'm not dealing with all the screen printing stuff, Like all I cared about was getting the product and the merch. And I, believe it or not, you could actually buy that online. And I ended up running that for I think I did 2 or 3 years. And then I had this I had to decide because it wasn't making any money, obviously. I mean,
how old were you when you started it?
I think it was the summer going into 8th grade. So I was between 7th and 8th grade. Yeah, it was pretty early on, but in a way it was almost like things were so much simpler back then. But at the same time, it was like domain names were pretty expensive, and I had to come up with $50 for the domain, and that was a huge barrier, oh man, $50. Because I wasn't really working. I didn't want to work. I just wanted to tinker on this stuff all day, And so it was definitely leaning towards being a business. Wasn't making any money and didn't even necessarily have a great way to inject money into it. And I was going to take it pretty far. But I remember this summer, I think I was going into sophomore year, and it was just man, I need this money for back to school clothes, or I need this money for I was going to launch a whole new line of merch. And ultimately, I sided with the back to school clothes, I was pretty stressed out and anxious those days, like most teenagers are, when you're in high school is a big deal, And so, and then, people at high school are asking me about this website, and they're like, oh man, that's kind of weird, oh, that's weird that you do that. Very, very few people are like, oh man, that's cool. I see what you're doing. It definitely leaned more towards I don't get it. Why do you do that? You're weird for doing that kind of thing. And that stuff, when you're young and stupid, it weighs on you. And then as you're older and you look back, it's these people just didn't get it, man.
Yeah.
You should have stuck with it.
Yeah,
but
you could have sold that website. No.
Yeah, right.
I mean? But yeah, at that time, people didn't really understand that stuff yet, And now it's all the,
And I didn't understand it. I mean, if we all look back to our 15-year-old self, and we're pretty embarrassed about a lot of things, and I could have made dumber decisions when I was 15. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I definitely made a lot of dumb decisions at that age. I did not have a business or anything close to the nature. Well, yeah. Not a legal business, so
just leave it at that.
That's all I can say. But yeah, man. So that's really cool, though. I mean, so you got it in your blood to be a hustler, a grinder from a young age, to start a business, to be attracted to, at that time, which we would even consider technology at that time, so to be able to develop a website at that time at such a young age, that's pretty remarkable, honestly. And, I'm a snowboard lover, advocate, shredder all day. Any day I can go, I will. So I wish I would have known. What was the website name again?
It was snowsuperstars.com. And
Snow Superstar.
I own the domain again.
Hell yeah.
Let's
get it going, dude.
Dude, I didn't own it for a long time. So I sunset that. I sunset everything for a few years. And then, PHP bulletin boards were pretty hot in like 04, just forums. Forums are still pretty popular with like Reddit, but this was like the old fashioned PHP bulletin board. And I was into cars. And so there's all these all these car forums, people posting pictures, how-to articles, stuff like that. And me being 16, 17, 18, I'm really into cars. And I'm like, man, I could relaunch Snow Superstars, but just as this PHP bulletin board. And so I gave that like 1 year in like 04. I gave it 1 year relaunch as a bulletin board. It was just a shell of its former self, almost like a just see what I can do type of thing. And then after I graduated high school, I'm still super into cars. And I've got the domain, I've got the website. So I just started hosting like random things on the website. I wrote this one article. Oh, and it was how to seafoam your car, which means it's just this engine additive you run through the car, and it's supposed to like clean out carbon. And it was just, everybody was doing it back in those days. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna write like a how-to article on this. And I write this how-to article with like 6 or 8 photos, and I host it just on this weird domain like auto.snowsuperstars.com/seafoam.html. And I host it. I sent it to like a few people like on this forum that I'm a part of, thinking it'd help them out. And I had no idea at the time, but it turns out like over time, that article like blew up. Like we're talking still to this day, it's the most popular thing I've ever done on the internet. It was getting like 300 page views a day. And at this time, I don't have a clue. I don't know. And then, I'm in my college party days, and the domain is tolling, and it's like, I got to pay $19.99 to renew this thing. And I'm not doing anything with this website. I got like 8 articles on it. I don't think anything of it. I just let it expire. And these domain squatters, they know when popular domains expire. And because I was getting all this traffic, it was popular and I just didn't know it. So these domain squatters then buy up snowsuperstars.com. And I kid you not, they sit on this domain for a decade plus, and they won't budge on the $5,000 they want for it. And I'm like, no, I'll give you $5. Like you don't understand. Like this domain, it's a dumb domain.
Yeah.
It was made by a 15-year-old. It's stupid. It means nothing. And finally, like I think about 24 months ago, this company finally stopped squatting it. So I bought it for $8 and I own it again.
Nice.
So
there you go.
I'm pretty happy about that.
Sweet, man. Yeah, that's awesome. So you were running that up through high school. Mm-hmm. Kind of stopped about midway through high school, sophomore year or so. And then just focused on doing high school things and just being a normal high schooler for the rest of the years there.
Yeah, just you turn 15 and a half, you get your driver's license. You're like, I can't wait to drive, and then you get your car,
girls,
right?
Parties.
And dude, this is what I blame. I blame Fast and the Furious coming out when I was like 14 and a half, So I can't wait to turn 16, and you can imagine how much money I poured into a car, Acura Integra. One time I put nitrous in it.
That's awesome, dude.
Super embarrassing. and I couldn't tell my dad.
Driving Division.
Luckily, I never fired it on Division. I had to tell my dad it was an engine cool down kit because he's seeing me wrenching on this thing for days at a time in his garage. And if he would have known what I was doing, I'd be in big trouble. So yeah, I'd say I just went back to living in a normal high school life, and like all the money because let's be honest, anytime you're trying to spin up a project, business project, what have you, you need money, and all of my money is going to cars. Mm-hmm. And so like, that was just my focus. That's how passion is. Passion will if you're passionate about something, nothing else matters.
Were you working during high school, like a normal job, or?
I had one job. I was a snowboard instructor, and like you don't make anything,
right?
You know, it was like my biggest paycheck was like $160 or something like that. So I tried to take that serious because it also kind of like worked out with, you know, when you go to school 6+ hours a day. You know, how much money can you really make?
Yeah.
And you know what, like back in these days, people are begging for labor. But when we were like 16, it was hard to find a job, man, especially like a job that was flexible with like a high school kid's life. So, I mean, I only had money from just doing odd jobs, like, you know, mow these lawns or
just whatever. Yeah.
Manual labor.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you go to college, Eastern Oregon University. Did you know when you got there what you wanted to study, or how did that process go for you?
It was bad, man. I didn't have a clue. It was so bad. I started at Spokane Falls like everybody does.
Oh, okay.
And like that was a mess too, because when you're 19 years old and you're still surrounded by all your high school buddies, you know, more or less, and this is not talking bad about any of them. If anything, it's just a reflection of exactly what I was doing. You know, all we wanted to do was like party. You know, it was easy. It's cheap to party in your hometown.
Yeah.
So I'm going to school. I think at Spokane Falls, it was very close to I failed as many classes as I passed. And sooner or later I got sick of that, and I was just like, I got it. Because I started getting old, you know. I went to Spokane Falls on and off for 4 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just living, you know, working at a car wash, sometimes going to school, sometimes not. No entrepreneurial motivation at all. Just being a dumb,
kind of just lost in those years a little bit.
Oh, totally. You know, when you, I mean, and it almost sounds worse than it is. But I mean, if you really are working and then partying, it's like, God, I was just never really even that sober to think about it.
No. Yeah.
And then, so once I did snap out of it, I went to Eastern Oregon, but one of my, like you were touching on, I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. I didn't want to take business classes. I thought I was going to take like, I wanted to become like a personal trainer or something because I was into fitness at the time. Yeah. Then I like start seeing the curriculum, like anatomy, physiology. I'm like, oh, these are way above my head. You know, I know I'm not capable of that. So I had a buddy who was still is freelance assistant director on movies, you know, like Hollywood movies, like $5 million and above budget at North by Northwest. You say at North by Northwest, but he's a freelancer. The whole industry, they're really freelancers. And he's like, oh yeah, I can get you on. And I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty cool. Like, and sure enough, Eastern Oregon University at the time had a film production program, and I'm like, all right, I'll just select film production. As soon as I graduate, I'll move back home. I North by Northwest was right there. I did my internship like a block away from here.
Yeah, and I've been there before,
and it was cool. You know, like everything was cool. I'm like, man, I worked on. It was a low budget. It was a $5 million movie, which doesn't sound low budget, but all that money really goes to the big names in it. Like Peter Dinklage was in it. Steve Zahn was in it. So I do this internship.
What movie was it?
It was called Knights of Badassdom. Straight to Redbox.
Steve Zahn was in it, though?
Yeah, and I got to talk to him. He was super cool. He came up and talked to me, and I was like starstruck. I'm like, oh, because like as a high school, I thought Saving Silverman was like the funniest movie.
Yeah, for sure. Steve Zahn's a legend, man.
Right? Yeah, that's how I felt too. So I'm like, oh man, this is the life. This is super cool. But I don't know the status of it right now. But Washington, the whole reason my buddy was able to do it and I was going to be able to do it is Washington had a tax credit where if you filmed a movie in the state of Washington, they'd give you like 40% back on every dollar spent. Yeah. So a movie costs almost half to film here as it would in California. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's like I graduate and the state withdraws the tax credit. And like, so the work absolutely dries up. I mean, there's nothing. So then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I like cameras, supposedly. That's what I went to college for. So I went and worked at KHQ. Worst job I've ever had in my life. I can say that with full confidence.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
Well, first of all, the shift started at 3:30 in the morning.
Okay.
And I am not a morning person, if you can even call that morning. My first shift, I didn't even go to bed before. I'm like, yeah, I think it'll be easier to just stay up and go.
Right.
And it wasn't. Within like the first hour, I'm like, I got to get out of this place. Like you could just, there's something about it.
Like the first day, the first hour.
First hour. I was for sure like, I got to get out of here. And there's just something about, like, I know this is going to sound so bad, but I have no other way to describe it. But it's like the vibe was way off. Like you could tell, because let's be honest, local news is not what it used to be. The whole industry is just dying. Yeah. And you could tell it was dying. It was like, you could see it was just like being financially squeezed. And it was just the morale was pretty low. I talked to a guy that had been there for 6 years, and he went to college for TV video. He'd been there 6 years. They hired me on at a higher wage than he was making, and I'm like, I'm not going to be that guy.
Oh yeah,
like that's not going to be me. And so that's when I was desperate. And this is 2011, so again, there's not that much work available. And especially not for a film production degree in Spokane. And I just had a friend who was a software developer. He and his business partner had just launched a new project, and he's like, "Hey, we need a marketing guy, and I could probably get you hired." Like his business partner was technically the decision maker, and he was ultimately had the most equity, and he was just kind of like let's just say he was a pretty relaxed guy. And so he wasn't looking to go interview 100 people for this position. My buddy's just like, "Oh yeah, I got the guy." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I just started making it up. I was just like, "Oh, I kid you not." I got back in like the snowsuperstars.com mentality of how am I going to get people to this website, and that's what I did. And in a way,
that's awesome.
I stayed in that lane until, you and I meet, and then I take over Bison Printing. I stayed in that digital media lane because it just fit my skill set so well, even though it had nothing to do with what I went to college for. But I mean, can't most people say that,
Yeah.
Most people.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of people. Yeah.
Right.
Especially now more than ever. Like people go to college, they don't ever get a job in what they got a degree for. Seems pretty standard. So.
Especially people go to college for like costume design or art history. It's just, obscure things where it's like, don't get me wrong, I see the merit in learning about that topic, but don't put yourself $50K in the hole to go learn about that stuff and then think you're going to get a job that's even somewhat related to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic because I went to Spokane Falls for a little bit too, but I was there, and like during one summer break, I got a job at Zome, at that screen printing. Well, it's I think they're more than a screen printing shop, but essentially that's why I got interested because I was running Third Kind Apparel. I had just started it. They had been the company to print my first shirts. And then I just asked for a job one summer. And then I was like, yeah, I'm not going back to school because this is rather what I be doing full time and learn hands on, literally. Totally. So I just decided not to go back to school. I don't know if I ever will. I don't really feel the need to at this point. I'm 5 years into owning my own businesses and
right.
But I think there's a lot of respect due to the people that go through the steps to earn a degree. Because I think that's what it's more really about. It's about the fact that you had the discipline to finish out this education to earn this degree. And
totally.
If you do that, then it shows that you're probably a pretty good person to hire on,
I 100% agree.
So if you're not going to be a business owner, having a degree, I think, is an asset.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you, like, to your point, it's for the first time in your life, a lot of times you're not even near your home. So there's nobody to answer to. You probably have a little bit of money, whether that came from financial aid or a student job or something like that. And it's like, there's nobody stopping you from partying and skipping class. There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah.
So if you can by yourself say, no, I'm not going out. I'm going to sit here and write this essay. And you do that, dozens of times over for 4 years, and you do what it takes to get the degree. That's definitely worth something for sure.
Yeah.
And it's just about those. It's to your point. It's just about the discipline and going through those steps, not necessarily the skill set that you learned while doing it.
Right. You said you were working for your friend's business. Were they both your friends? Or one was?
One was,
okay.
So my friend, he was actually, we knew each other in elementary school. We went to Spokane Falls together for a little bit. Then we actually ended up going to Eastern Oregon for a little bit. Actually, we went to Eastern Oregon for the full time together, about 3 years. Mm-hmm. He got a business degree, but just like we're talking about, he was just on the side of self-taught software developer. Mm-hmm. And so he meets his business partner through just doing a freelance job. And so the dynamic was, there was like, the business partner was the ultimate decision maker. He already had like 1 or 2 successful software companies, and he was spinning up this third one. My friend Danny was the one building it, mostly front end. And then Danny's the one that pulled me into it, and I did all the marketing. And so that was my first like official, like, I am working as like a full-on digital marketer.
And did you stay at that company until you decided to go and start Bison? Were you with that, or did you transition different companies?
I definitely transitioned. So I stayed with that for like, Jesus, bad. I don't even know that. About a year or two. Ended up moving to Seattle, actually with that friend. And when I went to Seattle, I'm like, okay, like let's see what this city has to offer, kind of thing. Like, I don't know. I had this energy. I got this degree with fresh ink on it. I've got a little bit of experience in digital marketing. I'm like, let's just see what I can get. I applied to so many jobs, and I was getting nothing in return. It was the first time in my life I had felt like what I would call it like depression. I'm like, dude, I am spinning my wheels. I can't get anything. Long story short, I get hired on at this wine store. It's like the main floor is, I believe, the biggest independently owned wine store in Seattle. And then upstairs is their website called madwine.com. And I was basically hired on to be madwine.com's only employee. So I'd do the email marketing campaigns. I would do order fulfillment. I would work with the reps to order the wine. I would update the website. I would update the inventory. I was a true like one man shop it wasn't completely online business. And it worked out well because I was a one man marketing department before that. Going back to my early days of tinkering on like that snowboarding website, it's obviously just me. And I'm like, yeah, I feel really comfortable being completely independent, being this only employee. It was a really cool job. I just, long story short, ended up just kind of getting forced out of Seattle. I no longer had my roommates. I couldn't make ends meet, just me, getting a 1-bedroom over there. So I moved back and then get a job at a marketing agency, still is here in town, called Ignitium. And that's when I really got into like business to business marketing. My boss there, Oleg, was really big into training, and he's just like, I want you to train on all this stuff. And it was like 3 pages long of different software platforms, just everything. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. And so like, I just became this, like, I went from like the self-taught marketer at this tiny little software company to like getting these crazy certifications from the largest software platforms in the world. And I liked it. I did like that life, but it's corporate marketing. Most of my time was spent doing marketing campaigns for Verizon Connect, which is a division of Verizon centered around fleet and asset tracking. It's not the most riveting stuff in the world, you know? Yeah. And anytime you're working with a big business in the marketing department, I should say, you can pretty much brush any creativity and freedom aside. And so it really just became a chore. You know, I'm doing the same stuff week after week, whether that be media buying and running campaigns, copy pasting, titles for advertisements. When you're working with a company like Verizon, you don't get to write anything. Oh, you think you have a good idea? Cool. Let's run it through 12 people in the legal department first, you know? Yeah. And I held that job for 5 years, and it was a great job. I'm still thankful for it. I still love my old boss, but I was very motivated to move on. And that's why I went through such a severe career change.
So you and Joel are childhood friends, basically grew up together from
seventh grade.
Seventh grade on. He helped you do a design for your website.
Yeah.
So you guys started to have a conversation about him needing to have his own screen printing facility to essentially save money for the Great P&W.
Yep.
And that's how the whole Bison Printing concept came about.
That's basically exactly it. He's like, because he was already in the process of, he at least had the property to build the new Great P&W facility.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
He'd outgrown that little place on Monroe.
Yeah.
It was a house converted into an office, you know, and it was dark. He, as his brand grew, he just. What in the world was that?
I wonder if another.
Oh no! Something blew up.
It blew up.
What was that? Oh.
Was it?
Oh my goodness! This thing is so cold. It blew up. No way, dude. That was borderline freaky, was it not? Well, it's okay, good. Brandon. You're the one that's got to edit it out. You want to just re-ask the question so it's easy for him?
What were we even talking about?
We were talking about, because you were like, so you basically were explaining the conversation Joel and I had to start Bison Printing.
Yeah. And you were at the place of describing the building getting built in Monroe.
Okay, yeah. So the way Bison Printing got started is so Joel outgrows the Great P&W, essentially outgrows their office. So and they're getting so big that Joel has the ability to build a brand new building, and
it's just insane.
It is, yeah, it is
not insane because he's a grinder, but just like what a boss that guy is, man. And I'm just gonna build this new facility. He didn't even buy an old warehouse. He just builds his own thing.
Exactly. And when you're first in, like we would all be, when you're doing that for the very first time, when you're looking on these blueprints, you're like, oh my God, this place is, he's basically building like this mega complex of fun and business. And he's like, I can fit the printing equipment in here. If I have all the printing equipment, it's not going to be running at 100% capacity with just the Great P&W. I could do some outside stuff too. So that was like a thought he had completely independently in his head. Because at this time, like Joel and I are living such different lives. We're seeing each other maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Like I'm seeing him at like the Rainier parties, you know?
Yeah, right.
And so we had reconnected with some other friends, and then we decided to have a lunch to talk about some business stuff, essentially media buying, because I was doing that at my agency, and we were tossing around the idea of me doing it for him. Ultimately, we both decided against it, but that's when he was like, "Hey," he essentially said, "You know, I'm thinking about like starting this printing business," and we were at Nudo downtown, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm in. Like, I think I just said it like right on the spot. Like I didn't even think about it that much. And it did, obviously, it was construction, all the construction and everything took a lot of time to go through it. Like you said, I think probably 2 years, because it was like, I told Joel I'm in, us three meet, and then hurry up and wait kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm stressing because I don't want to tell my boss that like I'm gonna be leaving, because I need work in the meantime, which thank God, I didn't say anything.
Right.
And so I'm like, Joel, you can't say a word about this to anybody,
Yeah.
and my boss actually has some ties to somebody that owns a screen printing business in town. So I'm like, dude, you got to be like hush hush. And he wasn't, People were coming up to me that I don't even talk to, like, hey, I heard you doing this. I'm like, who told you that? Like, what?
No.
So anyways, I'm trying my best, I'm talking to you. I'm straight up watching YouTube videos on like how you even screen print. I read like a book by Ryan Moore, CEO and founder of like Ryanet and screenprinting.com.
Yeah.
I'm looking up this equipment. I'm like, okay, this press prints this many shirts in an hour. Here's how many we can do a week. We'll make this much money. And it's like all this stuff in hindsight is so funny because it's all so dumb and irrelevant to what we were actually doing. So the construction's finally starting to get close. Like there's not a pavement in the parking lot, but like there's electricity to the building. The building locks. And Joel's still like, they're still operating out of the old place, and there's multiple employees and everything. I think he had at least 2 or 3 employees at the time.
Yeah.
And so they're not even moved over, but all of a sudden stuff is showing up. At this point, they're showing up to the new building. At this point, I'm still working at Ignitium. My boss is in the clear. I gave him essentially a 2-month notice because I really respect him and I appreciated everything he did for me. And I'm like, hey man, here's the truth. I will work for you as long as I can. I want this to be as seamless as possible. So I'm like, I'm still working at Ignitium. But then like I'm actually doing both at the same time. And like I didn't even really have a conversation with Ignitium about it, but like sooner or later I just kind of like stopped going in and I just kept showing up to the new Bison building because there just kept being more and more and more action. Like Joel would call me and be like, dude, there's a semi out front. They've got like all this stuff to drop off. And I'm like, oh my God, and I one day I set up my desk and I never left. And it's been like that since. At this point now, I think once we hit September, I will have had a desk in that building for 3 years. Mm-hmm. But from there, we started to just like slowly ramp up, like putting together a workforce, which with the exception of like one person, I've had one person turn over in this 2.5 years. Everybody else has been the same people.
That story is for the people maybe, but that is hilarious because I know he's turned over in a lot of places. yes. That wasn't
anything we did wrong. So that was like, so as far as the transition into Bison Printing, that was the physical transition, but like the mental transition and like finally starting to understand like what my role entailed was like, it was pretty jarring. You can't prepare for what's coming.
Oh yeah. Dude, I knew from the time Joel wanted to do this and how fast it was going to grow for the screen printing business. Mm-hmm. And even like he had asked me, and I don't know if he recalls or he just wanted to save money originally, but when he brought me to the building and he was like, what do you think? I'm like, it's not big enough.
Right.
It's not big enough. Like
Totally.
You need way more than this to do everything that you're going to want to do. And like the exponential growth that I foresee Bison experiencing is going to be so immense that this is not enough room.
Totally.
It's been awesome. It's a dope place. I've been really fortunate to have Joel like have open arms and allow me to hang out there. But that was the first thing I knew from the gate. It was not big enough. Now you guys are, you know, making your additions so that you guys can have that proper room to operate.
Right.
Because you guys can barely operate in there at times. It feels like, you know, there's so much stuff stacked from the floor to the ceiling.
You were 100% right. When you took one look at it, you were 100% right. I had somebody else that owns a small shop in town come walk through in its infancy. He more or less said the same thing. Yeah. You know, had a third person come through who is a production manager at a competing shop. He more or less said the same thing, and I'm like, great, you know, because it was the loan was, you couldn't make the building bigger.
Yeah,
you know, and it's not as you know too. It's not just a size thing. It was clearly laid out by somebody that didn't know how to run a screen printing shop. There's no other way to say it. You know, the building's too modular, and yeah,
it's the halls and like to the back and
totally
getting your garments and
because the average person doesn't know. I didn't know. I mean, 100 t-shirts takes up a lot of space, and 100 t-shirts is not that much, and the volume we're talking about. And so like, it's certainly been a grind to get as much done as we do with the space we have. And that's a testament to every single person that works there, you know? And now that we know, although it's funny because we have essentially a blueprint of how the new building will be laid out. And I just giggle. I'm like, on day one, this thing's going to be absolutely maxed out. Like there's almost no room to grow. There's a little room to grow, the sewing department, but everything else, it's already full. The place is totally full, but, I'm okay with it. I've heard from, and this is what I believe. I know some people obviously will disagree, but like I'm cool with the size of where we're going to be in the new building. I'm not chasing infinite growth. I think in screen printing, it's an extremely slippery slope. I've heard people that know a lot more about screen printing than me, just through like Instagram live stuff and webinars and podcasts and stuff like that. I've heard so many people say like, oh man, I'm so remorseful that I ever went bigger than 2 automatic presses. And dude, it's what's so funny about it is I've heard multiple people that they're not even talking to each other, different medias, meaning like I heard one guy on Instagram be like, oh man, I regret going over 2 presses so bad. Hear another guy on a webinar completely unrelated says the exact same thing. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to get in this new space. I'm going to pump the brakes. We're going to grow into it and let's just make it work.
Yeah.
You know, this is not a publicly traded company. I don't have to answer to shareholders that all they care about is, will that number keep going up and up and up and up? All I care about is, can I produce the amount of goods I need to produce within a year while still making enough money to keep everybody happy and well taken care of and keep the lights on. Like it's not about, I'm not trying to be the biggest screen printer in the world or even the city for that matter. I'm just trying to run this business in the best manner I can for the people working inside and the people we're serving outside.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, growing a screen print shop with just the hopes of just like being able to soak in as many clients as possible, I don't think is the way I would ever want to operate, you know. In fact, I like saying no to clients. I mean, I don't like it. Let me say that different. I don't say yes to everybody because like I do want to work with certain types of people, and there's certain projects that I just don't want to take on, you know.
Totally.
So having that as being a part of the way you operate helps you make sure that the people that you work for, you care about more deeply, and that you produce them good quality product, you know, instead of like taking on more than you can chew and trying to exponentially always grow, like the focus kind of gets taken off the product and the quality and is more focused on like, how do we get bigger? How do we get more shirts out in a quicker time? How do we, you start like trying to break down these finite details of how you can get more out of the day. And then you kind of lose focus on quality. So yeah, I mean, that was like one problem that I have had with some of the, that's what I've developed in my mind of how I want to operate my businesses for clients is like, I'm just trying to work with clients that want great quality product, and I can find the people to deliver them that product.
Totally.
I can help design the product, and I can help get it produced into your door.
Right.
Because like I don't do production. And in fact, like in certain terms, Bison and Third Kind Design would be oppositions, but we don't look at it that way.
Totally.
We've never treated each other that way. We treat each other as brothers. You guys have always been open arms to when you can take on my jobs, you do, you know what I mean? And we work together almost as if we're like sister companies more than it is like,
totally.
Or like you're bringing in competition, or even sometimes where one client of mine has gone to yours, it was like, oh, well, that's just what it is. At least it went to a brother of mine, you know what I mean? Instead of them going to somewhere that I don't think they'd be in good hands,
Right.
So,
and you said something, and I've got a question for you. So, and I think this will help a lot of people, a lot of business-minded people listening. You said, oh, I like telling people no, and then you're like, well, no, I don't like it, and I know that exact feeling that you're talking about. You get this, you get this. There's certain red flags you get when you're talking to somebody, and sometimes you can't even put your finger on it. You just go, you're talking to somebody, and you're like, man, there's going to be a bad order. There's something about this. And not only do you not get enjoyment out of telling them no, you don't even really know what to say, right? So my question to you is, so say you're in the early stages, somebody from, let's just say a bar or a restaurant, somebody local comes to you and they're like, hey man, and you get I want these shirts, I want these hoodies, I want these hats. And you start to get a bad feeling. What would you say to this person to tell them essentially like, we can't work together?
Yeah, that's a hard one because it depends. If it's the first time, I'll probably see it through.
Okay.
Unless it's just overtly ridiculous how the client is treating me or the way that he wants things, and it's not possible. If there's just overtly things that are just ridiculous about the way he's approaching the project, then at that time I'd probably be like, hey, look, I'm not interested in this project. And I have done that. But most of the time I'll try to see it through the first time just to see how that complete process will go with that individual. If it continues on, and it has to be pretty bad. I can deal with most stuff, but there's just certain people I don't want to work with.
For sure.
If you have a certain kind of negative attitude, if you try to treat me as if I'm your
servant.
I'm your servant. Great word. Like, I'm not your servant. I run my own businesses, and It's like, I don't even like when people call me the t-shirt guy. Oh, like I'll deliver shirts and they'll be like, oh, you the t-shirt guy? Hey, I need some t-shirts. Like while I'm delivering shirts to a client, I'll be like, no, my name's Bobby, or I'll like redirect them back to like, I don't go up to somebody and be like, whatever they do and be like, oh, you're that guy?
Right.
Like, I just can't stand that kind of talk,
For sure.
Because it's sliding. You're sliding somebody, even if you're not really aware. But, like, the way people talk, I don't think they're very aware of how, like, it is demeaning, certain things that you do, And
Absolutely.
so, like, I'm very hypersensitive to that stuff, probably overtly. As I've gotten older, I let a lot of that slip off my shoulders. But I remember, like, one client, she always wanted these meticulous stickers, like, and one-offs, and like just all the time. I dealt with her for a while, and then she was like copping an attitude with me because she didn't have the right artwork, and she was expecting me to fix the artwork for her for free. And I was like, no, we won't be working together anymore.
Was it if we're literally reading that email you sent to her, was it as short as that?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. I was like, no, I'm not interested in working with you any longer. You know, I might have said something of our communication doesn't line up. I'm very respectful when I let them go. I don't like jeer at them, but I will let them know what it is that I'm not going to accept from them.
Yeah.
But you got to be a boss to be able to be in that position. Obviously, if you're working for somebody.
Oh yeah, right.
I actually was working for somebody at that point, but I had let my bosses know that I couldn't, and they were trying to enforce me to try to work it out with her. But now in my position as an owner, I will not tolerate any kind of foul energy from my clients, and I don't give them any either, so like,
for sure,
there's just no place for that.
I agree.
In any part of my life, anytime I experience that with anybody in any part of my life, I try to find a solution, or I create the distance,
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. I do have one example that happened last year. This was with a City Chapters client. So all my jackets, they're custom made. They take 2 weeks to be made and shipped, which I feel is a decent amount of time. It's not too long. It's not too short. It's about what I need, Yeah,
it's very reasonable.
Yeah, I feel like 2 weeks for a custom jacket is reasonable.
Agreed.
There's a lot that goes into making these jackets, and the time frame. And I'm also one man, so running these companies. So she orders a jacket. Instantly, I get an email like that night, like, hey, my jacket hasn't shipped out. I'm like, as it says on our website, it takes 2 weeks to ship. We custom make all our jackets. Well, she's giving me attitude. I can't remember exactly what she responded to, but it was like very short and like bitter. And then she says nothing. So I'm waiting, I'm getting the jacket ready. It's going to ship out on the 2 week mark exactly. But that day I had it made and was getting ready to ship it. But I get another email from her, and she was being very rude again. Hey, where's my jacket? I need tracking. And like, just says like, this is the worst customer service I've ever experienced. Like, I respond, it was going to ship today. I say it was going to ship today. It was 2 weeks exactly. But we, as City Chapters, how did I say it? Essentially just said, don't want people with your kind of attitude wearing our clothing, because, we're trying to build people that are strong, positive community members to be a part of City Chapters. It's very evident you are not. I didn't say that. I did not say that in the email, but I said it in ways that were professional, so that, she couldn't take it and repost it or whatever it is. It was very professional how I made that message to her. But that's essentially what I was saying in the message. And she never responded. I refunded her order. I just said, hey, it was going to ship. I'm going to refund your order. And
okay,
blessings.
Congratulations. You played yourself.
Yeah, you played yourself. Exactly.
Well, I just think it's really cool to tell people like the essentially the actionable insight, because we live in the generation of side hustles, right? Like even if you were working 9 to 5 somewhere else, you'd probably still be doing this as a side hustle. And a lot of people are. And a lot of people, think about like all the terrain artists around here, anybody that does any kind of freelancing, I think anybody with a side hustle has seen some of these red flags, and they're like, all of a sudden, like the metaphorical, the scale starts to like come up in their head, and they're like, well, I shouldn't be turning this order down. I need orders. I need money. That's why I'm doing this. And then on the other side, it's like, this person's being a asshole, you know, like they're not respecting me. And you sit there and you go, sometimes you feel like really lost and helpless, and you're like, God, I don't know what to do. And it's like, it's this very careful balancing act of like, okay, can I continue to be professional? I almost kind of just maybe to some extent disregard this person's complaints and just get the job done regardless. Because the worst feeling is when you say, you know what, I'm going to do it. I don't care. There's been a lot of red flags. They're complaining, they're whiny, but I'm going to do it anyways. And then you get halfway through and you're like, this person is making my life a living hell. Yeah. Why did I ever say yes to this?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, I deal with that on almost a weekly basis. And so I think it's just cool. I think it's cool to hear, you go into detail about what you've said. Only one really comes to mind for me. And I was more or less in the exact same lane as you just described. We'd had some early meetings. I go, quite frankly, above and beyond with a lot of what could be brand new customers, like we're kind of just a screen print shop. A lot of people won't like go visit them at their business, sit down, have a meeting. I was doing all that. I even brought an employee with me and more or less, this guy was just like playing this strange form of hardball with me, almost like he didn't understand the gap between. So when you're selling 6, 7, 8-figure solutions, like you often are in like the software world, there is a lot of negotiating. You can sit there and go back and forth and say, no, I don't want this, and this, because you're like, yeah, you're about to pay an invoice for $5 million. I completely understand the back and forth. We're talking
a different world.
It's totally different. The sales cycles can be 6 to 18 months. I get it. But when we're talking about, I'm going to do a run of 50 shirts for you, like, dude, like, let's just think about this. I don't manufacture the shirts. I have to buy these. I have to buy the ink. I pay for the labor. Like, dude, this needs to be like, we got to kind of move this along. There is not, quite frankly, there's not enough margin to sit here and go back and forth all day long for sometimes weeks, as you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, I offered you this price, dude, because based off what I know, we should be able to close this in about 24 hours. I'll have it to you in 10 days and we both go our separate ways and everybody's happy. Mm-hmm. And this guy he just wouldn't stop. He wouldn't stop negotiating and thinks he's playing hardball. And I told him, like, I think it was a 2-sentence email, and I was like, hey, at this time we've decided to pass on this project. I think this place might be. I referred him to somewhere else. Then he started blowing up the phones. He started blowing up the office phones.
Wow.
So I
lunatic.
Yeah, I kind of had to send another one like, hey man, this decision is final, and I wish you the best of luck.
Yeah.
But we're all stuck in this world. You not so much, because you don't have a hard physical address, but anybody that does is at the mercy of a bad Google review, and it's always in the back of your head.
Yeah. I mean, and actually my
Do you have Google reviews for city chapters? Do you have Google reviews?
Yeah, I think people could.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Probably.
Yeah.
And it's like, man,
people could.
And when someone does Google
and
you,
kind design,
what's going to be the very first thing they see? It's going to be that review.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's always in the back of your head.
But I think people nowadays too, like, if you have, one, of course, like, if you ask people to give you positive reviews, you can, but you got to be careful. You got to be professional on how you don't work with a client. But, I don't really believe somebody with that kind of foul energy can really ruin your business, because everybody else that you work with that acts appropriately is going to tell others, like, I love working with them.
Totally.
And this guy might try to shout things from the rooftop about why he's so upset, but everybody's going to be like, yeah, well, Tom or Fred is always like that.
Right,
like,
right.
He's always pissed about something.
Totally.
And if you want to leave a review, like over a situation where, you know, like you're the, like almost you can see in reviews when it's really the person that's the problem.
For sure.
Leaving the review.
Yeah.
You can kind of just pick up on that they're just a Jerry or a, you know, one of those people. It's just like, come on.
For sure. You see them leaving reviews that that their 5-star pad thai was too spicy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, that's on you, man.
Yeah.
For sure.
Exactly.
You can. And to your point, referrals are everything, right? A person-to-person referral means so much more than reviews.
I think, you know, and too, like a lot of people just, you know, in business, I feel like a lot of people live in fear of like, oh, I don't want to get a bad review. I don't want, you know, these different things. You know, for me, it's just like a morale thing. Like, I don't care about the money so much. I care about it to a certain extent, right? And I'm willing to deal with some things to get to the money. Mm-hmm. But once you cross a certain threshold, I don't care about the money no more, and you're not worth my time.
Totally.
And I don't have to say yes to you.
Right.
I don't have to take your order. I don't have to do these things. Like, you know, and like I think a lot in society tells you like you never say no to anything. Well, that sucks for you, yo. Like, because there's a lot of things you should say no to.
Bro, I know.
In life, in general, you know, in business, you should say no.
I agree.
And that just sets your value that much higher when you say no to people. Like, this isn't for everybody. Not everybody can work with me, you know? And if you do want to work with me, you know, I want to work with like-minded people and most of the time, you know? And
absolutely.
I do love clients that are super easy and they're just like, yo, I need a few hundred shirts for my construction company. High-vis shirts, black ink, that's it. I don't even care. Just get them to me whenever. Here's the money. I don't even need to see how much I'm not going to, you know, I love those clients. Then I love the clients that I do more intricate work for. Mm-hmm. But the ones that are like, want to order 24 shirts and they want to nitpick everything down and they don't even understand what a vector is, I don't really want to work with you.
Exactly.
Like, you're not worth my time.
And to your point, you have to be able to say no, which I think there was all these old, like almost like 70s, 80s, like business sayings, like you don't say no, the customer's always right. And it's like, these are some of the stupidest sayings I've ever heard in my life.
The customer's always right that one drives me nuts, bro.
That's crazy.
People that still try to implement that.
Right.
And I think it's disappearing more. Like now, like even like certain stores, like if people are acting wrong, like they tell them to leave. Like you can't speak to us that way.
Totally.
So you got to leave.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to, like, for me too, with employees, like I care a lot about my employees, and like I think it's my job to protect them too from, like, when someone's being an absolute lunatic, I'm not going to be like, well, we got to get that sale though. You know, I'm going to be like, tell them to F off. You know, like if this person's mentally unstable, you're not going to fix this person. Like, send them down the street and they can go somewhere else. You know, like you got to, especially these days with labor shortages, like not only you got to protect yourself, you got to protect your business, and you got to protect your employees. You know, if someone's got just a belligerent attitude, like, get them out of your life.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Like you gotta, we work so hard on building these brands, right? And it's like, you do have to protect it at some point too, you know?
Definitely. I mean, and that's why I told that one lady no. Like, it's clear you have a certain way of treating people that is not respectful, and I wouldn't want you wearing city chapters.
Exactly.
Like, that's not the kind of representation that I would want out there.
Totally.
You know, to be a representative of your city, you need to be a positive person and you need to treat others with respect. Yet she wanted to use her whatever issue it was that she's dealing with in her own life and try to project that onto me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to allow that from people. I never have and never will, you know? So that's just what it is, you know? And
totally agree.
And there's the pros and cons of being your own boss, your own owner, but those are some of the pros. Like I love being able, I do love being able to tell that certain type of person no.
For
it feels
sure.
good, because if I was working for a company that's like, oh, you can never do that, you should never say that to a client, I'm like, well, I probably can't work here.
Exactly. You can't.
That's
just,
why I do work by myself. For myself, really, is a lot of those kinds of things. So
that's the best part. You know, it's working for yourself is a gift and the curse. But man, it is having the freedom to do stuff like that is one of the bigger gifts.
It does feel good.
It does. It can be uncomfortable, but when when the dust settles and a couple of weeks have gone by, it's like, whew, glad I'm not talking to that person anymore.
Yeah, seriously. You mentioned your employees. That's actually a good segue. Let's highlight some of your employees.
Yeah.
Or the employees, not some of them.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I'll go through all of them. Like, Justin Marco's been with us from day one. He had to sit through some of those probably too early meetings like you did with me. Production worker extraordinaire. He's very knowledgeable about screen printing. As you know, and maybe a lot of people don't know, it's tough work. I mean, this stuff is very, very tough work, mentally and physically. And he weathers the storm. And only a couple months later is when I hired Andrew Moore. Same story. He's just an absolute beast, an absolute grinder. It takes this work takes a toll on you, and he's always up for it, and he produces great work. You know, like, and this is these people they're hard to find in this industry just because it's hard. You know, a lot of people they don't want a hard job, and luckily, I've been able. Those two guys they've been the core of the screen printing part of Bison from basically day one. Yeah. Then after that, Michael Thompson came on. He's the absolute man at sewing. He knew sewing before I ever met him. He literally has a great P&W tattoo, which is absolutely crazy. And sewing's a lost art form. I know you know a little bit of sewing yourself.
A little bit, yeah.
But man, I've posted job postings for sewing before, and there's not a lot of people out there that know it. And he knows it. He knows it good. He makes it look easy. He's a grinder, and like Andrew and like Justin, the work is good too. You know, it's one thing to just put your head down and work really hard, but if everything looks like shit at the end of the day, you know, who's really happy? These three guys, they turn out top-notch work. And then my newest hire, he's been on for over a year, is Nathan Coyne. He's from Portland, and he's really just bought into Spokane. He's bought into Bison. Again, he's got a hard job, man. People don't know. He does everything. You know, that's the thing about a small business is you got to be, if you're an employee, you got to be able to do a little bit of everything. And that guy legitimately does a little bit of everything, including, and he's probably doing it as we speak. He's got to unbox and stack and count. And I mean, like I said, 100 garments that's a lot of volume at physical, you know, that's a lot of mass. It's heavy. And this guy absolutely grinds on that.
Yeah, but he's going through thousands probably in a week. I mean,
I don't even want to say it, but we have a shipment coming tomorrow that's like 180 something boxes. They're not even on pallets.
Yeah.
And me and Nate and Michael are going to be grinding on that. And then when it comes to office workers, Kyle Peterson, absolute animal. I mean, I hardly ever give him a job title because again, he does so much. Like he handles sales. For the most part, he handles sales, but he's a very hands-on guy. We acquired a business he started called Select Threads, which was custom produced socks. So like the learning curve was pretty low with him because he already knew the sourcing and customer service and customer sales side of things. So like, man, he's absolutely hit the ground running. And you know, there's low maintenance employees and there's high maintenance employees. Kyle is closer to a no maintenance employee. Like he can see what I've been working on and just pick up the missing pieces. And that's, typically he doesn't have to, but like when I went on vacation, he was like, oh yeah, I can see what you were doing here and he can finish it. I can see what you're doing here and he can finish it. Because a lot of people, they need a lot of direction. They don't just finish things on their own. He doesn't need, he can fill in the blanks. He can put together the puzzle, which is like, oh my God, it lifts so much off my shoulders. And then we've got Greg Larson, who's hasn't been with us a year yet. He's a designer, and his designs have been killing it. So he did. It's actually, I'm glad I get to talk about this. So he did through us. We did a custom shirt for No Lie with this KC 135 kind of Fairchild Air Force design, kind of like an homage to Fairchild. And we didn't think too much of it. No Lie wanted to do it. We're like, yeah, man, that's going to be cool. So he draws up this design, and they can't keep the shirt on the shelves. Like
really?
It is absolutely it's their bestseller. And
nice.
I think it's, how
I don't even think I've seen that one.
it's
So
military green black print. So it fits in very well with the Americana merchandise that's so hot right now anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So that certainly helps, but I'm like, dude, I'm like, I bet you this shirt's going to sell well for at minimum 2 years, and it's like, you can, or at least I can, or I can help. I can train people on Photoshop, Illustrator. I mean, I can't train them on Illustrator, but I can buy them training for this, right? I can make them proficient at software, but you can't just make somebody proficient at designs. Like being able to design for clients is a huge thing, and he's been knocking his designs out of the park. I was really worried when I lost Josh Wing over to the Great P&W. I was stressing it, because people loved Josh's designs. It was big footsteps to fill, and Greg's done it. Greg's been awesome, and so like my core of guys is. It's great. Like it's hardly even at this point when the business is so small. I think we're a team of 7. If you include Joel, it's 8. When it's this small, it really does almost feel like a family, which is like a super cliche, eye-rolling thing for anybody to say about a business and employees. But at this size, I think that is true. And it's like, as long as we've got this core, I feel very confident, comfortable about the growth around it. Once you get to a certain size, like people talking about, oh, we're all a family. That's mostly just HR kind of jargon, but like with this core, we are a family. And with these guys, the sky's the limit. The reason why we've had this undersized shop from day one and still been able to crank out things, people come in all the time like, oh, I thought your production would be bigger than this. I'm like, yeah, it's thanks to these guys, like they make it work. And in that same vein, my goal is not to work people into the ground by any means. Like if anything, that's one of my worries. Like it's such taxing work that it's like, sometimes these guys are asking for overtime and I'm like, you got to go home, man. Like you're going to burn out. Yeah. Like this is hard work. And it's like, I can't wait to throttle down overtime just for like their personal, physical, and mental health, because it's like, I want you guys leaving after 8 hours, and I want you going home on the weekend. Yeah. Because otherwise you can't do this kind of work forever, No. So like they're actually like, one of my biggest motivations to get into that new building is to really cement in a good like work-life balance kind of thing, Because I know these employees like I have right now, they do not grow on trees. And so like,
especially in this industry, and the industry you're in, like,
right,
to find good screen printers that actually you gotta I don't know how else to say it, but it's rough out there on the selection of screen printers, and I don't know what it's like in other cities, but around here it is really hard to get clean, young professionals that actually look at it as an art form instead of it being just like a job that I got to do, and they don't care about the product. Like, you know, like that's huge around here. And I'm not saying that's true across the board for other businesses around here, but it is true for a lot of them. And like to get a great screen printer, like the two you have, they're rare.
For sure.
They are rare.
I mean, a good example. I hope I don't know this guy that well, so I hope I don't butcher anything. But I believe his name's Garrett from that band Indian Goat in town.
Yeah,
and he was hanging out at the shop one time, and he's like, "Oh, I used to run a Rock automatic screen printing press." I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome, dude. You ever want a job?" And I'm just trying to build up, kind of a mental book of people. We weren't hiring or anything. And he goes,
yeah.
"Oh, fuck no, I'll never touch one of those again." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I don't even know where he worked or why he feels that way, but it was probably because it was just so mentally and physically taxing, Right. Like that's the answer. When people leave screen printing and you ask them if they want to screen print, it's
a high stress environment because, I mean, and two, like, you guys really had no acclimation period of opening your doors, getting used to bringing in business. And like, it was like day one because your sister companies with the great P&W, you're connected with Joel. Everybody's like, "Oh, okay, well, Joel's doing this now. Like, we're giving all our business over to Joel."
Right.
Which is Bison. But I mean, that's the truth of the matter. You know what I mean? Like you were set up right away from day one and had to go through those immense, fast growing pains. Still are and still will always be probably, like, or trying to even restrict the growth. Like you're saying, like, how do we, like, cause you're obviously going to meet those challenges where you're going to have to be telling people no, or like we've discussed and I've alluded to you how I run my business, you figure out other ways to get things done. But but like from day one, you guys have been like, I know every screen shop in town felt the impact of Bison printing being on the block. You know what I mean? Like there's no way, we know ones directly that were definitely impacted greatly by it. And still, people are going to continue to be impacted by you guys being around because one is you guys approach this business in a very professional manner. And there's a certain standard that you guys know you have to hold yourself to. And you guys do really care about the product that you guys put out.
Absolutely.
And you guys, have always been very honest with me. I haven't even been able to use you guys lately to do my production because you guys have been so busy.
Totally.
It's like, which is great, for you guys.
It is. And
I want to use you guys, but I'm like, my other guys are good too, but I obviously love working with you because you guys are like family. I do believe that is true with your crew at that building because I was a part of it at one time. I haven't been as much lately, but with you guys opening the new building and stuff, I think I would be spending more time there again. But like everybody there is like already known each other, have all been friends in the skate community. Like, so, it's not like all these random guys working together that became family. It's like almost like the family was already there. And then you guys decided to get involved in business, and it's worked out.
It's like there's gotta be, there is some form of fine line there. Maybe it's not that fine, but I think it's like, it's been this perfect blend of like, I didn't personally know, with the exception of Joel, my business partner, but all of my employees, we've only just kind of all had mutual connections.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that's actually perfect because the biggest problem would be like, if I did hire somebody that I'm friends with and they're just not pulling their weight, like that's when it gets uncomfortable.
For sure.
When it's like, hey man, like, can we talk? Like, you kind of suck as an employee, and that would be super uncomfortable. And it is something that like, it's something I do think that as I do have to scale and hire, I want to avoid. It's like, I want to keep hiring acquaintances so I can get I get essentially the sign off of like, oh, my employee referred this guy, so he's putting his neck out. So it's a good referral. But at the same time, I don't know this dude, I don't have any problem being like, hey man, you got to do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't, you can't work here. Whereas if that was like your good personal friend, it'd be so dumb to have to lose a friendship over business.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that is true. I guess more how you described is more appropriate of the actual chemistry there, that you guys are all like knew of each other, but you guys weren't all like best friends hanging out every day.
Exactly.
But I think with like acquaintances, you know them enough to know whether they're going to fit in well or not.
Totally.
And then you don't have that deep connection where there's a higher sensitivity level. So it's like, yo, I'm here to do my job. I respect you. You respect me. And so
totally,
it seems to have worked out really well. I think, I don't have any employees yet. I've been trying to stay away from it.
For sure.
I know eventually I will have to, but it's not something that I feel I need to do to consider myself successful in business. Mainly just there's a lot that obviously comes with running employees. I'm trying to run my business as lean. So me and you have taken different approaches. Let me ask this question. I was kind of describing what I feel how Bison is different. How do you feel you differentiate around Spokane from other print shops?
Yeah, I think the very first thing is you have to get a grasp of what this, because you're almost always working with just another business. Mm-hmm. You have to get a grasp of like, what are you trying to accomplish here? What do you want these shirts for? And so like, if you can understand the why, then it's like you actually can start to take this person down the right path and get them ultimately what they want. But that's a little bit easier said than done, because in order to understand the why, you have to put in the effort. You have to like, when a lead comes in and you do qualify it, and it does look like, okay, they at least have some artwork. They are not trying to print one shirt. So you qualify them, right? After you qualify them, then you spend the time on the why, and you have to listen. You have to care. If you can't put in the time to contact this person and actually listen to what they're saying and understand the why, if you think you're just going to order take this stuff, maybe you can do that for a little bit, but I just don't think you're going to get that many repeat orders, right? So you understand the why. So it's like, are these employee shirts? Are you trying to sell these? Where are these? Where are these going? What are you trying to do with this? And if they're like, oh, these are actually employee shirts. I love my employees. But they have got a really hard job. They need to work in these. And it's like, oh, okay. We don't need to worry about leaving margin on the table for you to mark these up and sell to somebody. Okay. Well, maybe we're in like the $15 to $20 range. You want to get them like this nice, like, moisture wicking type of shirt. And like, all of a sudden you're guiding them through what can be a very confusing industry, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're guiding them, but you're getting them exactly what they want at the end of the day. And it's not always that simple. Like, a lot of people come to us, they also want like a custom design. So it actually starts at like, okay, what are you hoping to see in this design? That's when you really have some like pretty in-depth conversations within reason. You always got to cut these things off at an hour or something. There's always a balance between how much time you're spending and how much money you're making. That's not prioritizing money. That's like, you got to pay the bills, So I think it's ultimately understanding who this person is, what they want to do with this merchandise, and then you lay out their best options based off of your experience. Like, luckily, as we know, these garment catalogs they're damn near infinite, right? There's so much out there, but when it really comes to like the best stuff at the best price, it's actually pretty small, unless somebody's trying to do some really wacky stuff, then you're like,
yeah, I only go to a few companies really now.
Same.
It's like, yeah.
So you're guiding them, you guide them to get what they want, because you can get what you need if they have everything they want. So as long as we have this perfect balance, like, it's all good, but it just starts with, like I said, effort. You have to put in the effort.
So basically that you give them a more intricate, in-depth experience than just them like, all right, well, these are these t-shirts, this is what's best. Like, you dive in deeper with them to understand what they need.
Exactly. Because you could, if somebody emailed you or me and they just go, hey man, here's the artwork, I need 24 shirts. You could just quote that up. You could put them on and, just make some assumptions. You could be the guy that assumes like, oh, I'll get more sales if I give them the cheapest possible t-shirt. Or you could be the guy that's like, I'm just going to put them on the really high stuff and see if they'll pay it.
That's what I do.
Right.
I don't try to sell the cheap stuff unless it's like a construction company or something. Like, I try to steer everybody away from buying cheaper t-shirts or whatever. Yeah, the industry is like, for people approaching us, like, they might not understand like how intricate it is to price something out though too. Like, I get people all the time, they're like, yeah, hey man, how much would 36 t-shirts be? I'm like, well, I'm going to need a little bit more information than that to give you a price. There's thousands of t-shirts. Obviously I really narrow that down to a few that I usually use, but the design, does your design need work? How many colors is it? How many print locations are we doing? Like, exactly. But they don't understand that, but it's just funny because you get that all the time. Like, people just think that we have like a price for every item off the top of our dome. And it's like, there's just a lot more intricacies that go into pricing out the product. But
we always laugh about that all the time. Hey man, how much do t-shirts cost? It's like, talk about a red flag. Yeah. that's a big red flag right there. Cause that's why I get really uncomfortable. We don't get that many, but when somebody does walk in, when we have a walk in,
oh yeah.
And they're just like, hey man, I'm trying to get 24 shirts. I need you to do some artwork. And they just kind of look at you like, what's that going to cost me? I'm like standing there in the middle of like, I've got boxes up to my shoulders. Like, dude, this, we got to spend some time on this, like look at my watch, like, okay, dude, do you want to sit down right now? Like, cause this is, I've kind of started working backwards too with, I want to see the art first. If they have it, it's like, let's look at your art and then like, let's price from there kind of thing. Because like I said really early on, if you go to 3 different shops, you give all 3 of them the same artwork, but you go to 3 different shops, they might, not only will they print it differently, you're probably going to end up on totally different shirts. You're going to end up with totally different pricing. You're going to have totally different turnaround times. It's weird. There's not that many industries like that, And so it's like, you just really got to be like, okay, hey man, we got to sit down and talk about this. And then there's no way around it. You can back me up on this. You kind of got to work your ass off on these quotes, Oh man, quotes can take forever. Yeah. And you make one mistake, you're kind of stuck with that pricing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you gotta be careful there.
It's stressful. Like we had a meeting today. It wasn't a walk-in, but we did have this person come into the shop, and I'm like, I'll get you all this information, but it's gonna be like 24 hours at least, like, because we're talking hats, hoodies, T-shirts, and multiple styles of all this stuff, and it's like
24 hours is even a short time.
It kind of is,
yeah.
And then there's also the thing too, like it almost all has to be in an email, right? And it's not just so like when somebody comes to us and they're like, "Hey, I'm working on this project. I need these T-shirts." To them, this project is everything. It's what they're thinking about. They're imagining themselves wearing these shirts. They're telling their employees when they're going to have these shirts. They're picturing how they're going to feel, what their logo is going to look like from the first time moving from digital to physical. They're thinking about this one project. Where for me, I'm probably juggling a dozen to 3 dozen projects at any given time. It's like I can only put a sliver of my day into this. I got to have all this in writing. I've got to have an email trail of what we've been talking about, because people drop off all the time too. Things are going good. Next thing you know, they haven't really replied to you in like 2 weeks, and you don't think anything of it because you're working on the other 25 projects. But then they do, they show back up sometimes 5 months later, and they're like, "I'm ready. Let's do it." And I'm like, who is this? And I'm like, I go back through, I'm like, oh, thank God I still have all this stuff written. And then you throw on the extra layer of COVID that we're all still feeling the effects of, with the delays on supplies, whether that be the inks, the chemicals, the shirts, the hats. And these crazy fluctuating prices due to fuel, like I've heard shirts are going back up in price next month. And it's like, dude, I gave you, that price I gave you, like, I can't give you that. That was 5 months ago that you asked me. Like, everything's changed. Yeah. And then, if you, all of a sudden you're marking something up $2 a unit, like, some people are going to understand. A lot of people aren't going to understand, especially if you don't have a relationship with them. It's like, hey man, I hate to do this to you, but like, we're not at $15 anymore. We're at $17. Like, I'm just a decorator, don't shoot the messenger. I'm not manufacturing this stuff. I'm not price setting this stuff. The amount of money I was making on this order is going to be damn near exactly the same, but you're going to have to pay an extra $2 because my hat manufacturer is charging me an extra $2.
Yeah. And I'm not eating the cost.
No, you can't. I mean,
yeah, no way. That's just what it is. Like, and that's where clients start giving, if they want to get mad at, all right, then, well, we can go with a cheaper product.
Totally.
Or you pay the $2. I mean, honestly, for me, like most of my clients, I have a pretty small client list, but they don't work with me to get the cheapest price.
Right.
They know I'm not the cheapest, and I have no intention to be the cheapest. And usually if anybody is trying to do a price bid with me, I just tell them I'm not interested.
Totally.
Because I just say, well, I'm not going to be the cheapest. If you want to work and have a great experience,
yeah, absolutely,
then I might be a good choice for you. But I'm not going to try to be the cheapest here. So
same.
And I've won a lot of bids that way because of my customer service. They're like, you weren't the cheapest, but your response time and your efficiency and the way you do your mock-ups and those different things, it's like, I rather work with you. You seem to have a lot more professionalism than these other guys. So
exactly. And this could be another little good tidbit for any any people that are into business trying to learn a little bit from this podcast, is sometimes you actually a smaller business can be a better customer to you than a big business can have.
Yeah, because 80-20.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a big business will have, like, I'm not going to name any names because this is still a client of mine, but they've got, I think they're between 200 and 300 employees, and they've got a whole department around sourcing. And all these people do is they bid on stuff, and they request bids from people like screen printers, and manufacturers. Yeah. And the only thing they do is they choose the one that comes in cheapest. Mm-hmm. And it's like, with the business I'm talking about, I've tried multiple times. I'd be like, hey, I'm happy to come in there. I'll bring some samples by. Let's meet with the marketing department. Let me understand what you guys are trying to do here, and I can guide you on the best path. They've never once taken me up on the offer. I've never once spoken to somebody that actually is any bit involved in the tees or the hoodies. They send me POs. As soon as I accept it, I have 10 days to print it, and that's it. That's all. Whereas maybe you're working with a 10-person business, you might be sitting down with the owner and being like, hey man, okay, check out these. Yes, you're going to spend $3 a unit higher than this shirt, but feel this. Go try this on. Do you like this? And they're like, yeah, I do like this. Yeah, this is what I want my brand on. This is what I want my logo on. I want to be associated with this fit and this feel. And so you can fall into the conundrum of, my business has got it. To make it, I need to work with the biggest businesses around. And
they're the hardest to work with.
They can be the hardest. And there is no, you don't even get to make the personal connection. You might not even get to talk to the person that's actually in charge of buying your product.
And there is no room for error.
Oh yeah, there's absolutely none. Nope. And
no room for error.
I am actually, because as like I told you, we're going to grow, and then we're going to stop and stay that size. And I'm going to have to choose who I'm cutting out, know? And it's like people like that, they'll be the first to go. Yeah. Go send your RFPs to somebody else, man. I got shirts to print. Mm-hmm. It's just how it is.
Yeah. And for me, it's like, I want to do meaningful work. I think that's really where I got to in my businesses, and realizing like what kind of clients I want to work with. I want to work with people that it has meaning behind, like that they are they're intrinsically involved in the end product, just like I am with city chapters. Like they're trying to create an awesome product for their brand, their company, and I get to work with people on that. That's what I love about my job, working with clients, is when I get to work on cool, challenging, fun projects of getting something that's going to kick ass,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why if obviously probably my favorite client of mine is the Great P&W. Yeah. But if they're kind of an in-house client. So if I set them off to the side and you ask me like, who are some of your favorite people that you work with? I love working with No Lie. Because when I go over there at least once a week. I've got a standing meeting every other week. But when I go in there, I talk to John Bryant, the owner. I talked to his son, Jack Bryant. He's in charge of branding and marketing. Mm-hmm. And then Cole Bryant, his other son, Cindy Bryant, his wife. And like, we're sitting there almost like I'm like a member of their extended family. And we're scheming up the ways to make No Lie as cool as possible. Yeah. Why wouldn't you like that? Yeah. That's the cool work. Is anybody thinking about money or trying to get costs down? Like, absolutely not. Like, we're all just focused on this common goal. Like, how far can we take No Lie? How cool can we make No Lie? And like, for those moments of talking to them and hanging out with them, it's like, I'm not working. Yeah. And it's like, wow, what a great feeling. Where on the other hand, sometimes you look at the caller ID for another client, you're like, oh my God, this person again, and it's like, you gotta somehow marry your work to your passions and try to find a way to make the work not feel like work. I'm not that good at it 95% of the time. Most of it feels like work. But when you can find that, when you can marry those two, it's like you hit that state of flow. Everything feels good. It's easier said than done, but that's what I'm ultimately want to get to when we're in the new space. Is we have our core of clients that we love working with, and we're going to get to capacity. And we're going to close the doors to anybody new. And we're just going to keep doing what we do best with the people that show our services and products the most respect. They understand what we're trying to do. And that's what we're going to leave the business as.
Nice.
I think that makes the most sense. I don't want to race a dozen other shops to the bottom bidding on jobs. I don't really care to.
Yeah. And why?
But for what?
If you don't, I mean, your business model isn't set for that, and that's exactly what makes it amazing to me, you know. Like, I don't think I'll probably have an owner of another screen print shop on here, you know, most likely.
We'll see.
Probably not. I mean, I just don't. Yeah, probably not. You know? So,
well, I'm glad to be the one and only then. In that case.
Well, yeah. I mean, you just look at business a lot like I think I do. You know, and the way you do things at Bison are probably very similar in the ways I would do it if I was running an actual screen printing facility. Mm-hmm. And working with you guys has always been amazing, you know, and by far I trust you guys the most with screen printing because I know that your employees are really paying attention and they really care, you know.
Yeah, and they know when they're your orders too. Like I've heard multiple times, oh, this is how Bobby likes it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's cool too. Like when you submit a PO, you're like, I don't send you an artwork approval because it's like, well, he's already shown me how he wants it. Mm-hmm. You know, he doesn't need to, why would he need to approve exactly how he sends it over? It's like, we're on the same page. Yeah. And that's ultimately the best customers for, I don't care what business or service you're in. If you and your customer are on the same page, that's when the good stuff starts getting produced. Mm-hmm. You know, we're all speaking the same language here.
I look forward to be able to get that building open so I can squeeze myself in.
I know.
Squeeze in there a little bit.
It's been a long time, and we have 3 more Rainier jobs to print. Supply chain delays, we just haven't had the garments yet. That's what those 180 boxes are going to be. Yeah. And because boy, when this business is so, you know, there's such big ebbs and flows. You know, big orders come, and it just seems like every time you try to put a big order in, I'm like, there's like currently like a run of 900 on the press right now, and there's like 7 more queued up behind it, and it's just, I mean, maybe it stays that way through the end of the year. You don't know. That's also what keeps me up at night about having a new building. You know, you don't want to double in size and then things slow down. But
yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem for you guys.
I don't think that's happening either. But yeah, I mean, God, it has been too long since we've got to work on a project together.
Yeah. I mean, we've done some sewing projects. Obviously, I use Mike and you guys for sewing on my patches. Did these hats right here?
Oh yeah, I thought those looked familiar. But that's that's one of those things you can really, like, a mock-up of a hat is going to be pretty accurate, you know? Where with T-shirts, you really see things come to life for the first time when they're printed.
Yeah.
And most people respect and actually enjoy that, watching the transition from digital to physical, but every so often you'll get that person that's like, that's not what it looked like on the computer, and it's like, I mean, this isn't the metaverse, dude. Like, there's a gap between. You might look at your screen all day, but remember, there is a gap between the screen and real life, man. Like, that's the cool part of this. That's where the art comes to life. That's not a bad thing, you know. And yeah, there's some clients I could get rid of in the long run. They don't see the.
Sounds like some clients out there are getting fired, y'all.
You heard it here first.
Yep. Well, we got about like 10 minutes, man, and then we'll wrap it up. But what are some of the most challenging aspects of being a business owner? Is it, you know, your scheduling, your personal life, your balance, like sleep? What are some of the challenges you face being a business owner? You got employees, so I think mostly you have it pretty good there.
Yeah, it's it does depend on your background. I went from being similar to you, doing a lot of one-man, very self-sufficient things. So essentially, I was always working on deliverables. You know, I was working on it. I'm not a designer, but I was like working on an advertisement. I was working on an email. So, you know, you get to work and you start working on the deliverables. When you're a business owner with employees, you damn near can kiss all that goodbye. And if you do want to work on deliverables, that's going to have to be in the OT hours, meaning the early morning or the late night. Because if you have 5+ employees, when you go to work, you don't have time to work on stuff. You're going to get interrupted, you know, and that's not saying anything negative about the people interrupting you, because you have answers to questions they have, and you're the only one that can provide these answers. And so you have to make this huge adjustment from like, man, I'm not working on stuff anymore. I have to tell people what to do. And then when you tell people what to do, unfortunately, it's a pretty big fact of life. If you know there's a project that needs to be done and you have to tell somebody else to do it, you've already kind of built what it looks like in your head, but you've given it to somebody else and they're not going to build it exactly to how that looks.
They don't see it the same way.
No.
Yeah. And
so you're going to go, so then you have to say, am I okay with that? Or do I then have to like tell them to do it again? And then it's just kind of, you're always weighing it. And then you can say, well, man, maybe I should just give them like a really detailed description on how to do it. But there's only so you start to run out of time in the day, you know? And I'd say one of the biggest issues is you're constantly running out of time in the day. So what's the old saying? The inbox is always full. And so no matter what, at any given time you see me, I am letting something slip through the cracks. It's just a fact of life. So as I sit here right now, somebody is irritated that I haven't wrote them back, you know? And unfortunately these days, people, they call, they email, they hit you up on the Instagram DMs, and they text. And so it's like, man, there's like these 4 channels that it's really hard to manage all 4, right? And on top of that, there's a lot of things in life I like to do that have nothing to do with work.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so you go like, I love golf. I suck at it, but I'm loving like the process of learning. And you start to play this horrific game with yourself where you're like, on one hand, you're like, you know what? I'm not working today. I'm just going to go golf. And then that other part of you is like, you're such a slacker. This is why you're not bigger than you are. You know, you're always off doing these things for yourself. And then if you do the inverse and you spend Saturday and Sunday working, there's this other side of you that goes, really? You just put in all this hard work to do more work? You know, where you try to build this business up for what? To work more on it. So I oftentimes find myself in this conundrum of I can't make myself happy. I'm either mad at myself because I'm not working, or I'm mad at myself because I am working. And I can try to go on the inbox and clean it out. But as you know too, in this line of work, if you go and reply to 10 emails, you're probably going to get 12 back. You know, you cleaned it out for maybe 5 seconds.
Or your client texts you about the email you just sent them.
Totally. And it's like, dude, how am I, what?
I'm like, yo, just respond to the email,
right.
bro. Like, don't do this to me.
I'm trying to stay organized, man. This is how things fall through the cracks, is when you start switching up the medium.
I do this to clients too. Like, they'll text me an order. I'm like, email it over.
For sure. Or else I'm going to forget it.
Like that, just email it over. Like, I'm not going to keep track of your order through a text. I don't mind talking about certain things via text, you know, but like when it comes to an order or like certain aspects of the business that need to be through email, like we just don't have text, which is insane to me, organized enough yet for us to keep track of business, which is insane. I've talked about this before.
I've heard of that. I've heard you talk about
my
this.
app idea.
Yeah, your app idea.
Or, you know what I'm saying? I might have to just get back into one of these ideas just to make a few mil and sell a company. But
but you're
seriously,
right.
like, why don't we have the availability to flag text?
Totally.
Or to categorize
them. Exactly.
Yeah, flag, categorize, put them in business, put them in personal, put them in family, put them in a red flag for urgent, or, you know, these different things like we can in email. Like, why aren't we doing that in text yet?
Totally.
It's bonkers.
It is. And I mean, I'm almost glad it doesn't exist because I just kind of want to not. It's already bad enough that, like, in this day and age, you're basically accessible 24/7.
Yeah, and people expecting that you should be.
Even family members,
Yeah.
you know, they can get
Yeah.
they get offended by it, and it's like, I'm just trying to live my damn life, you know. Like this back
That's
in your
funny.
day, you had to drive down the street to the payphone to talk to somebody, you know.
Yeah.
Like you had all this privacy that we're not afforded.
My mom talks about that, like I how she misses like when you used to just have a home phone. You know, if someone called you and left a voicemail, you didn't. It wasn't expected that you would have to even call them back that day.
No, you
know,
just got
a lot
to it
of
when you got
times
to
it
it.
was just like 3 days later. Oh, hey, you know.
Exactly.
But now, yeah, everybody expects this instant. Yeah, it's weird. I've been going through a lot of communication issues in my relationships lately, and it's been challenging.
Business just exponentially grows that too, and it's like, you know, when a good customer's texting you on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, you know, you go through some mental conundrums of what do you do.
Oh, I've had that happen to me recently. I'll tell you. One client, he decides to text me on a Saturday asking me when the shirts are going to be ready for his order. Well, I had emailed them and already told them when this order was to be expected. And so I texted him. I was like, hey, man, I don't work on Saturdays. I emailed you the expected dates. That's all I said. He didn't respond to me. So I was like, oh, he might be mad.
Yeah.
He wasn't, but he just probably was like, all right, well, I won't text him anymore. Check the email. But I could have responded, but I went through that whole conundrum. I even looked up the date and I was like, I could easily reply.
Totally.
And if he's listening, it's not like personal to you like that. It's just like, it's Saturday, bro. You know, it's
Totally.
like,
You gotta have some boundaries.
Yeah, you got to have some boundaries, and you have to set them for people, you know, like, because maybe in his head, he wasn't even thinking about it. He might have been working that day. He's like, oh, I need to know about the shirts.
Probably was.
But to me, it's like, yo, this is my Saturday, man. I need to disconnect, you know. And
Totally.
So, you know, I could have waited to respond till Monday, or I just let him know either way. But yeah, I'm a little bit more curt than I think most businesses are with their clients. You know, it's just like, because you got to be, man. We have to understand we're all individuals too. And when we're a business providing a product that people are excited to get, a lot of times they kind of forget certain etiquette. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
and it's like, oh, they're just thinking about the product and not really about what you got going on.
Exactly.
And I think it's very important for us to stay grounded in the fact that we are people and we have things going on in our life.
Totally.
And those things honestly supersede your product. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That just is what it is. And
Right.
I like to work with people that really understand that and respect that, you know?
I agree.
And so I think that's where it is about closing the doors. You know, it's like, I don't want everybody's business. I want these certain types of clients, and that's what I want.
Dude,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think you only have so many days on this earth, you know, like you got to go snowboarding, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to skip that because some construction company is like, where's my 200 safety vests? You know, it's like, are you going to like, what really matters in the long run? You know, it's all the things you're passionate about. And it sucks too that, like, I mean, I think it's dying off a little bit, but for a long time, like, grind culture was like so like thrown in everybody's faces, you know, like, oh man, you're a loser. You're not working on Saturday or Sunday, you loser, you know, like, and it's like, you know what, Gary V, how about you just go have a heart attack already? Because
I don't like Gary V.
Right?
I got into him when he first got popular, and and then I was like, yo, this guy is an extremist.
For sure. He's got issues.
Like, he was talking about one time, he's got major issues. He was talking about one time about playing basketball against his 8-year-old son or so, like 7-year-old. He's like, I never let him win. Ever. I I'm like, he's like, because he needs to learn that. I'm like, yo, you're a freaking maniac, bro. Like, you got something seriously wrong with you. I think that was really when I decided I'm not gonna listen to this guy no more.
Right?
Like like he talks about like I just stuffed my son, and like I'm like, bro, you are a maniac, dude.
It's embarrassing.
There's nothing admirable about this man and the way he treats his children to teach them to never give up because they lose. Like,
right, because he's dunking on an 8-year-old, probably on like a 7-foot rim too.
And I watched another one where he was meeting with rappers. I think it was like Jeezy, and like he just want to shut the hell up. Right, it's like, dude, shut the hell up. Let Jeezy or let Nip or one of these people talk. Like every time anybody says something, he's just like,
totally,
like, dude, shut up, bro.
And you also have to understand, at least for anybody, because our jobs do lean, at least when you're doing TK designs, our jobs do lean more towards a corporate job, just because like there's so much of like there's so much admin work, right? There's invoicing, there's emailing, there's all these things that, like, if you say you enjoy doing that on Saturday and Sunday, you're lying. Like that stuff is not fun. Whereas then if you try to compare that to like a guy, like let's just use rappers. Like, let's just say like Young Jeezy, like his job is so much different because he's essentially he's a professional at being himself. He goes around being himself, and he is getting paid for it. Yeah. That is not to say, don't get me wrong. I know there's dozens of things every week he still does that he doesn't like to do. But like the dude, when he goes into the studio and he grinds for 48 straight hours, he's expressing the things he's passionate about in life. You can't compare that to invoicing. Like those,
it's different.
It's a apples to oranges comparison. So it's not like you can't always just like look at this guy like, man, Gucci Mane's been putting out an album a week. This guy never stops working. Well, yeah, he's letting his passion and his artistry flow out of him, and he's doing what he was born to do. I'm not born to draw up invoices. And when you tell me, when we're 27 emails deep, and you're like, actually, what about the 3,600? How does that change my pricing? And it's like, oh, I'm not passionate about that. I'm trying to get this off my plate so I can go do some stuff I'm passionate about.
Definitely.
So it's like you gotta stop being, I'm almost talking to myself too, you gotta stop being so hard on yourself at the same point,
Podcast is therapy, bro. I feel it. It really is.
Maybe it is.
Something that I came to a realization of a while ago was like, how do you not become a slave to your own creation? Like your own business. Like you see it happen to people all the time. They become slaves to their own business.
For sure.
And that's a delicate line of knowing when you're a slave to your business or you're living life because of your business.
Right.
Like, I want to live life due to what I do for business.
Exactly.
I don't want to be a slave and feel like I always have to do these things for the business and I can't do these other things that I love and I care about. Like, I'm trying to mold my businesses basically around my lifestyle and to create more freedom.
Yeah.
Because you can take away your freedom based upon the ways you structure your business. And so like that's why I've structured my businesses the way I have. And I've taken a long time of like even figuring out really what I want to do in business and how I want to do it. And that's counterculture to what, a lot of society tells you got to do. Like, you need to hustle. And like, that's even me and Joel see things differently there,
Yeah.
Because Joel, that dude, he's a workaholic.
For sure.
Like, that dude's a monster, bro.
Totally.
But that works for him, and he loves it. Like, it's not a negative thing for him.
No,
that I've ever seen. It's just who he is. Like, he does, maybe he doesn't. I mean, he does all of it. He does everything too, really. But he will come in on Saturdays and hit the gym and then work, and then he loves that. But that's not for everybody. Like, I think Joel's kind of an anomaly, you know. He's one of those individuals that has such a work ethic that most of us really can't tap into that same type of level,
right? You
know, because like for us, there's just other things we want to do, but like Joel, he loves work, you know, like, and I love work, but not like that.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't love it like that. And, but we're all different, you know? And so that's why I love the podcast, is because we do get to air these things out and kind of talk about these differences in the way we see business, how we want to do business, how we feel about growing forward, the impacts that it have on us.
And but it's also important to touch on that Joel is he's a creator. He's always been a creator. He's you know, he can take a pen and paper, pencil and paper. He can draw awesome looking things. Yeah. And so he can hit a state of flow where he's designing and he's building products from scratch with manufacturers. So he can get into a state of passion and flow. And like you said, he's as good as anybody at doing that a lot, you know, more than I can, you know,
he really knows how to tap into that place, man.
Totally.
I'm not like he does. So,
and I'm not really, I don't create that much, you know, I'm not really creating anything. I'm doing the admin work to help people get their stuff created. Yeah. You know, I don't feel that much passion and flow in my day-to-day stuff. So, you know, you ask me to do that on a Saturday, Sunday, I just don't have it. But I think to your point too, of how you've set your business up in a very specific way to give yourself personal freedom. And I have a customer who's he's done the same thing. I really believe in where this guy's going. He's an Instagram. He's a local guy, Instagram influencer in the elk hunting space, and he's a really impressive go-getter, super hardworking, super fit guy. And he started his own gym before, so he's got a gym, you know, physical location, employees, and he's kind of moved past that to where he's just himself, you know. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure he does plenty of stuff he doesn't want to do, but like part of now his job is going out on elk hunts in some of the best spots in the world to elk hunts, you know. Yeah. He's thought about it in a way of, I don't need to grow a business as big as possible and become a slave to the business. He's found a way to capitalize on the things he enjoys doing. And I'm like, man, I've got so much respect for you, dude. Like, I have a ton of respect for him. I have a ton of respect for his brand. The brand is called Elk Shape. He's on Instagram under Elk Shape. It's kind of this. I'm not that knowledgeable on hunting at all. So that's why I don't want to go too deep into this, because I'd probably butcher so much about him and what he does. But it's like he's meshed fitness with elk hunting, which seems to be a pretty natural pairing, because these dudes, like, you know, hunters, do they like walk so deep and
ruck packs way deep and
and then pack it out. You know, if you get something
out,
So it's this really cool space that I know nothing about, and I feel proud to be printing his stuff. You know, like, awesome, I see what he's doing, and I'm like, damn, man, you found a way. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure he does plenty he doesn't want to be doing, but he's found a way to make being himself in his hobbies and his passions. He's found a way to make this profitable. You know?
Yeah, I do know. That's kind of what I have envisioned for the podcast. You know, it's like, be able to have real conversations with people, and it helps, you know, create this knowledge more about what I want to do with city chapters and more about myself. And who knows what kind of conversations it could lead on to. Like, obviously that guy right there sounds like somebody that would be awesome to have on the podcast eventually.
Totally. I think he's got his own podcast too, you know, one of those absolute grinders.
Yeah. It's awesome.
But yeah, that's one of the coolest parts about about Bison Printing is we're almost always printing for businesses, and so you meet a lot of other business owners from all different walks of life, and you know, and like elk hunting fitness is never something that crossed my mind, but I like meet this guy and I'm like, man, I see what you're doing. That's so cool. And like, because of the internet and technology, like we have access to the masses from anywhere. And it's like, man, if you can find a way to make your passion the way you pay your bills, like, man, how awesome is that?
Yeah. And two, like, depending obviously on what you're trying to do in business, but like, there's a lot of other businesses that can run your business for you. Right. And provide you the services you need for your business. So like, that's basically how I've set up my businesses. Right. Like, I've had to learn through mistakes of trying to do and buy equipment myself, and definitely had my learning curves, but I know now it's like, I want to be able to go anywhere in the world and operate my businesses and communicate with the other businesses that offer the services to provide the things that I need for my business from anywhere. Wherever I got internet, I can run my business essentially. Exactly. So that's how I think about it, and how I'm trying to, well, it's how I am setting up my businesses. So exactly. And if we're going to talk bad about like Gary Vee, I got to talk good about another, you know, influencer out there. I think that anybody that is looking to start almost like what do you want to call it? Digital nomad life or something like that. Yeah. Not be tied down. You don't have to become an influencer, but like Tim Ferriss has talked on this topic in great detail. A long time. Long before it was fashionable. Yeah. You know, you can even read the 4-hour work week, and this guy is talking about, you know, here's a guy who's an extremely successful millionaire, very hard worker, very talented guy. And what's he telling you about? How to work for 4 hours a week. Yeah. You know, if Gary Vee's calling you a loser for only working 40, this guy's calling you a loser for working 40, you know? Yeah. So I think that's a good way to balance everything definitely out. On the Tim Ferriss vibes. Yeah. Me too. I think the dude's super cool, you know? Like, I obviously don't know him personally, but like I've got a lot of respect for the perspective he takes on life, you know, and I know he's very similar to you. He's really into reading time. I think he might even be into writing and journaling and stuff like that. Yeah. And like I think that stuff like even though that doesn't fit my personality all that well, I totally see the merit in it. And if you want to do it, do it. Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, we all see the world differently and want to experience different things. So it's all about really what do you want to achieve, and how do you see success, you know, because that success is different for all of us. And that's something that I didn't really know for a long time. I thought I knew, you know, I thought I had ideas of what I wanted to achieve to attain the success that I thought I needed to have. But that's changed greatly over the years. And really, and just within this year again, I'm starting to be active in pursuing what now I foresee as being success for me, you know, because I've been really just kind of dormant in a lot of ways. I mean, doing business, but letting it just come in naturally. But now I'm definitely in a more proactive state, and I'm enjoying it. You know, I definitely go with the ebbs and flows right now. I'm, you know, riding a wave, you know. And we all are. Yeah. So I think we'll wrap it up, man. Sick. Well, is there anything else? Yeah. If you ever want to see any of our work, Bison _printing on Instagram can be a good follow in the stories. You know, we keep it's all lighthearted and fun to look at. Website's printwithbison.com if you're ever interested. And yeah, that's about it. I don't need to give anybody the sales pitch. You don't need to even be, you don't even need to be in the market for shirts. You know, if you just want to see cool stuff that we're printing, but that's not necessarily us, cool stuff that the city is doing, you know, cool concepts that people in Spokane are coming up with. We're just the ones printing them, you know. It's a really fun way to kind of see what a lot of these cool local businesses and local people are doing. So yeah, check that out. But past that, I don't have a crazy personal Instagram account or anything like that. Not trying to get my followers up, so we can just leave it at that. Cool, man. Well, that was chapter 5 with Grayson and Ervin. I'm your host, Bobby J. Till next time. Peace.
mix my humble beginnings with winnings and chemists as far as I know. Whoa, sugar and spice, I'm everything nice. I give you advice, they give you a price. If you paid attention, you'll see what I'm kicking. I'm wasting your money by saying it twice. Shit is a game, you wanna complain, you blaming your L's on the dice. Mama just whipped up the cobble, so I had to call it a reserve a slice. Whole fam gotta eat, closed mouth don't get fed. So all I had to do was speak. Now I'm talking myself from the bread, and y'all been talking me disease. Sleep.